Hi, this is Nate Morrison with the Morrison System, and I'm joined today by my good friend, Dr. Grove Higgins. Grove Higgins is, in my mind, a really phenomenal practitioner. He's going to tell us all about what he does, but right off the bat, he's a chiropractor, an ART therapist, he's a Z-Health trainer, lots and lots of stuff, and I've watched this man do some really amazing things. The last 2 or 3 years, you've been the president of LifeQuest Transitions.
That's correct, yep.
And that's been working with wounded soldiers out of Fort Carson. And you and I have worked together. I've watched you do some really amazing things with all of those folks and myself. And so now today, I want to introduce you to the audience and get them a sense of what it is that you do that's different from everyone else. So,
sure.
Dr. Grove Higgins, you're a chiropractor. We mentioned Z-Health and ART, but what else do you do? There's the chiropractic and go.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a little bit of history. 24 years ago is when I got into healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
I started in acute care physical therapy for 4 years, was working with things like strokes and diabetic amputees and paralysis and such like that. And so that was kind of my christening into the world of healthcare, particularly, but within physical medicine. And so I worked in the realm of rehabilitative medicine for many years, and then got up and through my college years, found a practitioner by the name of Dr. Mike Leahy, the person who created active release technique, and saw my ability to get patients better along with the chiropractic from the joint manipulation standpoint, as well as the soft tissue with the active release technique, and found I had to get some more tools. I had to get more knowledge. So I went off, got my certifications in ART, went off, got my doctorate in chiropractic, and all this time was strength and conditioning coach as well. And so, combined with my history from before with the severe neurological stuff, training athletes, rehabilitating athletes in the normal Joe, and then adding these tools in, has given me the great fortune to be able to work with a wide variety of individuals from the performance athlete who's looking to do performance enhancement, as well as the wounded, ill, and injured soldier who is looking to get fixed and then get out into the world and do things on their own. Right.
Now, there's also some more history there. I've seen the pictures. You were an amateur bodybuilder.
Yeah.
You were also a bit of a triathlete. You were an avid mountain bike guy. What else have you done in the athletic world?
I've been doing martial arts since I was a kid, younger than a teenager, I suppose. And I've always been in athletics. So movement has always been a part of my life. And from the martial arts aspect, that has given me a great appreciation for precision and practice and repetition and the values of that. And that's really worked into my practice as well. I am not looking for the quick fix, although we're able to get those often. But I'm really looking to, just like myself as an athlete, to give people tools that they can continue to improve upon themselves.
Right.
And also to change their mindset as it goes to their health. That change doesn't happen like that. It can, but that's rare.
Right. That
they can make these changes last a lifetime and continue to grow and expand as an athlete.
Right.
Especially as an athlete, but even as a normal individual that's just doing their normal jobs and living their normal lives.
Sure.
That there's tons of expansion there, and you can get younger as you get older and continue to improve and find new aspects of yourself.
Absolutely. Now there's so much here. My plate keeps getting more and more full as you talk, and but I don't want to lose focus. So chiropractics, ART, which is active release techniques. What exactly is ART?
So active release technique is a soft tissue injury management system, a set of techniques, like I said, developed by Dr. Mike Leahy. It is directed at the soft tissue system, so that's fascia, muscle, ligament, tendons, nervous tissue, and all that. Everything that connects to the bone and drives the bones, essentially. And looks at trying to find, diagnose, and treat those soft tissue injuries, whether it be scar tissue inside of a tissue, adhesions between tissues, such as between two muscle groups, and improving the health and the mechanics of those soft tissues that drive the skeletal system and such.
Right.
And so it's a great complement to the chiropractic aspect, because chiropractic is looking at normalizing joint mechanics.
Sure.
But the soft tissue drives it.
Right.
So the two of those together are fantastic. Then within that, I've gone and have gotten my certifications in biomechanics. So that way I can utilize my eyes to see the changes or the need for change in an individual and get down to the problem as quickly as possible.
Right, right.
And then on top of that, you mentioned Z Health. Rehabilitation has always been a part of me, but it hasn't always been as precise and as systematic an approach as it has been probably in the last 5-6 years for me, when I discovered Dr. Eric Cobb and the Z Health system, which basically takes all the knowledge that I had both from my previous life as well as a doctor, and knowledge and information that you have as a trainer and a coach, and puts a perspective on it. So that allows you to then look at the human system and say, what is a systematic approach to solving this problem, whether it be a performance issue or a rehabilitative issue, but the core center of it is from a neurological perspective, looking at how to affect the system from training the neurology, and how does that change the person structurally and performance-wise.
Right. So now when we say neurologically changing a person or rewiring, we're really talking about motor patterns, aren't we?
Motor patterns is really the first step in it, but yeah, definitely motor patterns. Consider that the system is always constantly looking for input. Right. And so as you're moving, you're sensing where you are, how fast you're moving, the forces on your body and whatnot. And your brain and your nervous system has to take all that information in and then modulates your performance depending on what it sees coming in from all that motion. And so the foundation of that is really mobility. At the core of it, good mobility translates to good performance. Right. And even just the slightest jam on a joint, particularly in areas that are of high importance, hands, feet, and such like that, can downregulate the whole system, take away performance, and lead to injury.
Right. Well, and you and I have seen that with my ankle.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
It throws off absolutely everything. Yeah. And even in something you don't think about much, where, for example, the kettlebell jerk, where there's a little bit of a dip, if I'm doing one-handed on my right side, no problem. On my left side, it's difficult for my body to even put it all together, and it all comes down to that ankle joint. So we have to do specific drills to rewire and energize that.
Yeah, most definitely. And then you have to repattern all of the muscles and the joints that were associated with it because they've compensated. Right. And I mean, it can go even as far as an individual comes in with right shoulder pain. You've got to look far away sometimes from where the problem seems to be, and look at those other things, because it might just be that ankle that's driving the chain all the way up, and the weakest link happens to be the shoulder, and that's where the pain comes out. But oftentimes as practitioners, both from a training aspect as well as from a rehabilitative aspect, we get stuck at looking at where we think the problem is. Right, right. And that's what the system really allows us to do. And then you can apply a million different tools to it, whatever your favorite tools are, because they all work. Right.
Well, and that's where you've achieved what I consider to be a level of mastery where you're able to step back and look at a person. And I've seen you do this probably thousands of times now, and with myself as well, and just see this person and see them for who and what they really are. And you can start to see that the traps are incredibly tight because they're holding tension, and they have a walking gait problem, and some of that's, say, related to a jammed SI joint in the back, and you're the guy that sees all of that stuff. And so, like, I've brought a few folks to you, like one of the guys that's going into special operations. He came down and he was walking uphill even when he's level. Right. Yeah. So there's all these different ways that you have to come into these problems. You're able. A lot of guys come in from one direction, and you're kind of sitting up above, saying, which one of these tools am I going to apply to this guy?
Yeah, and you know, a lot of that comes from, you know, finding very smart individuals to mentor under, and absorbing, and it becomes intuitive after a point in time. You know, I don't look for problems; they seem to jump out at me. But that didn't start that way. It's taken a long time to get to that point.
Sure.
It becomes almost reflex, and I see the problem and I can go to it. But the nice thing is I've been working with individuals and trying to help them to learn some of that as well. Still takes time, but it's not something that's just, you know, highly unique, and I don't have one particular secret or another.
Right.
But and anybody can learn these things if they're willing to go that extra effort to get the knowledge, get the training, and be taught by somebody and coached by somebody.
Right.
And that's really an important part to me, is that you've got to get coaching. I still like to get myself hands on me. Somebody get their hands on me and help me to learn how to move better.
Right.
Even if they're less of a practitioner than I am, or less of an athlete than I am. I always learn something from that.
Absolutely. So now, when it comes to what it is that you do, because you're re-entering the market, so to speak. You're moving on to a new phase in life, and you've been working with a lot of my guys, a lot of clients from other friends of ours that we have out there, but your passion is athletics and high performance, and you bring all of these tools. We've talked about various athletes in the local area that, for example, have poor biomechanics, and they're at a very young age. They're getting ready to hit a wall in their development. They have, for example, aspirations of Olympic gold, but you look at them, even I look at them a little bit, and say there's a problem here. And so where are you able to help out someone like that has a lot of motor pattern discrepancies or tightness, etc.? Where is it that you're able to come in and take that person to the next level?
So, you know, this comes down to, you know, it's hard for you to look at yourself from within, right? Most people don't have that great of body awareness, and they don't have coaches that can point out that they've got these problems. They're hitting their marks. They're making their competitions really well, but it doesn't mean that they're doing it biomechanically correct, and that they're not setting themselves up for failure. And so that's where, you know, being able to work with somebody, watch their biomechanics, watch how they progress and how they respond to stresses in the sport or in the movement, and then being able to target those, and then being able to say, you know, is this a manual therapy type of a problem? Is it a training and neuromuscular type of a problem, or is it both? You know, is really, really important. And this is where the athlete has to build a team around themselves. And that I don't care if that athlete is, you know, the Olympic gold athlete or the operator, you know, athlete, you know, in that sense. There has to be a team built up around them, so that way the team can see and can give input and can see these problems before they become walls and barriers to performance, and maybe even to, you know, good survival. Right.
And it's certainly easier to head those things off before they become the problem that stalled your performance, and now you've attacked it with a sledgehammer as much as you can, and now you're failing, and you have to do something. The road to recovery and performance is a lot longer if you wait that long.
Most definitely, and that's what we're really talking about is performance. It's not just rehab, you know, start of pain, end of pain.
Right.
We're looking at, you know, an evolution for the athlete, and that means some patience and some willingness to be coached. And so from my perspective, I like being a doctor. I love fixing problems, but in the end, I also want to be that coach. I want to be that person that helps that person evolve to being the maximal athlete or performer that they possibly can be.
So now because there are some folks that you work with and folks that we know, and performing at a very high level. So what you're able to do is, for example, with one friend of ours who's a triathlete, she, for example, doesn't have didn't have the best biomechanics at the time she was succeeding with the sledgehammer. Now, as I've watched this development, you're able to work on any of the issues that come up, whether it's joint alignment, muscle tension, connective tissue, you name it. You're able to solve those problems and make sure that motor patterning is happening. So she now has a higher level of skill in her chosen sport, which as you get older allows you to not only stay competitive but maybe even get better. Sure. Because right, a lot of these triathletes especially, don't peak till what, early mid-30s?
Oh yeah, mid to even late 30s in a lot of cases. But and you really hit on it. You know, she could not in this case see those things. And even though there was really good performance, there were still problems. And in that case, and as in a lot of cases with people who are high users of their bodies, you know, there's the fixes that need to occur. That you identify a problem, you fix that problem, and the training. But in that case, that individual, those types of individuals are constantly out there beating themselves up,
right,
for good cause. But and so they need a higher degree of maintenance as well. And in that case, we were able to do the maintenance and still progress with the individual. It doesn't mean stopping and settling here for a while and then progressing forward.
Right.
But if it's done well, and again in that team approach, then you can do a lot.
Right. Well, and her performance, I think, has certainly shown that.
Yeah, definitely.
That absolutely. And then, if you are, you know, another really interesting piece of it, and you did a lot of this with, say, the Wounded Warriors when you were doing the Life Quest thing full bore. You know, when people might be wondering how they can utilize you, you know, for example, I've got a friend of mine. Hopefully, he'll come to the Springs and see you, but he shattered his humerus and has had kind of a long road to recovery. It's all fixed, but as a result of the surgeries and the trauma and everything, the muscles and the tissues are all shortened, and he basically needs to relearn that in fact he has that range of motion if he could just get things to chill out and you know, relax.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, you have to know, you know, where does the manual therapy tools and the medicine aspect come to a halt, and where do we need to just do really good training with that individual, because, you know, that's an assault on the neurology. The neurology's top priority is survival.
Right.
And so now we have to retrain that, so that way the neurology, the brain, the spinal cord, and everything start to let go of those tissues and allow those tissues to be conditioned. Because a lot of times, and again with good cause, the system holds itself back, so that way you're not stupid again and you don't hurt yourself again.
Right.
And that's where knowing where all the tools put in place make a big difference. And so, and that's where I feel like I have a special calling, as it were.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've watched you. You're very good with restoring, you know, previous ranges of motion, previous performance, all that sort of thing. And it's interesting because people, they will come to you. I mean, one of the things that you talk about is pain and resolution of pain, but really, I mean, there's a certain amount of it that's physical, but another amount that's up here. And after a trauma or a sports injury or something like that, where you just, is it that they don't have the confidence to maybe extend the elbow all the way anymore, or kind of, how does that work?
I mean, you talked about it well in your book. You're looking at the spirit of the individual, the psychology, all of that type of stuff. It all comes into play. And when I, as a doctor, go to do a physical test on you, I can augment your performance. So doing a muscle test, I can augment your performance by, you know, doing things physically to you, but I can also have you change how you perform just by the mere thinking of something negative or positive. And especially after an injury, particularly from an athletic standpoint, that can be extremely damaging to you as an individual.
Right.
You know, that spirit and soul aspect. And that has to be considered for really good full healing. And then that's one thing that I've learned a lot from working with wounded, ill, and injured soldiers is how the spirit, the mind, the soul all kind of combine with the physiology to either create disabilities or to create abilities.
Right.
And so I've spent a lot of time investing in each individual that I work with, trying to find out what are those triggers, what are those things that are holding you back that aren't physical, that I can't treat with my hands.
Right.
But it always starts with the hands. That's the beautiful part, because if this starts to feel well, then this starts to feel well. And so no matter what kind of an athlete you are, if you can learn to manipulate this with good training systems and techniques and such like that, and you have that coaching to point out where the problems are so you don't hit frustration because you hit walls and speed bumps along the way, then you continue to expand, and your resiliency as an individual, as an athlete, grows deeper and deeper and deeper. And so you're no longer defined by just your sport and just your specialty and things like that. You become a much broader person in general.
Right. And ultimately, as we know in sports psychology, those are basically the same type of barriers that hold someone back, where they're a receiver who's literally afraid on the biggest game of the year to get, he's wide open and he's afraid to take it a little further into the end zone and hook left and catch that ball. He feels actually more secure closer to the defender, and they say, what the heck was that? As well.
Yeah, and what they don't realize is that, one, it does limit their performance, but also it leaves them open to injury, because what are they doing? They're tightening up. They're getting ready for the hit that's not coming and things like that. And so then things oftentimes happen there that cause injury long term. Sure,
absolutely. Yeah. You've been more than generous with your time. There's one more area that I want to dig into, and that is especially as the Morrison system is getting out there. There's a lot of guys that I know personally are now writing to me and asking me, hey, I'm older, I've lived that super high intense lifestyle. I've been jumping, diving, shooting. They're busted up. You should see some of these guys moving on the range. Actually, you have. Yeah. And, they look like they're old men, and they all want that mobility back. So if you're bound up and you're a retired operator that maybe I know in Las Vegas, you know who you are, what's your suggestion for basically starting the road back to that nice fluid plastic, another word for flow and plasticity, way of being? It's not in the drugs. Yep. It's not in just getting your back cracked. What's your suggestions for moving forward for those guys?
Well, first of all, don't do it alone. If you're looking to do it alone, you're going to be very disappointed, because there's just too much to be considering. And so you need that coach, you need that trainer, you need that doctor, things like that. So utilize the resources that are around you, and if they're not around you, seek them out. Yeah. A good place to start is with something like the Morrison system, manuals and such like that, where there is at least a very balanced approach to handling training and your recovery and things like that. Start there, and then find those other practitioners as you can, so that way they can help you move forward faster. Right. And then realize that it took you a long time to get to the point where you are. Right? Very. You're a collection of all of your life's experiences, all of your injuries. You're an accumulation of all of that type of thing. It didn't happen overnight for most of us. Right. And even if it did, there's still a lot of history that built into the current injury. And so you have to take a balanced and patient approach to these things. One of the practitioners that I work with, says, give me a year and other people won't recognize you. Right. Give me 2 years, you won't recognize yourself. Right. It takes time, and you can't rush things, and you can't be impatient with it, because then you will end up quitting and driving yourself into depression and whatnot. You have to set yourself out a goal, and if using systems like yours and such like that allows you to sit down and plan out how you're going to get from point A to point B will help you. You need to do that. Right. And I recommend it for everybody to do that. But then outside of that, you have to find new ways of doing things. If you're the type of operator like what you're talking about, you've been under high stress, you've been living a high tempo life and everything, you have to find new ways to direct that. Once you quit, if you stop all of that altogether, you will drive yourself crazy. Right. That's what kills executives when they quit big jobs. That's what kills NFL players when they quit the NFL. You have to find a new direction, a new focus for all of your energies, and it should be a very positive one that you're trying to go after. And again, this is where a coach and a physician and trainer can help you with that, because they have an outside perspective.
Yeah.
And so, contacting myself, coming to see and looking at the whole picture can be very important, and can really jumpstart that process and remove the frustration and the depression that follows those big changes in your life.
Right. And that's an interesting point, because it's noted within periodization that when you train hard and then you stop training, there really is a lot of athletes enter into pure clinical depression, become suicidal, etc. And then we see that's kind of on a more acute within a training cycle. But then police and firefighters, I mean, these guys are dropping dead by 55, there's some real reasons for that.
Yeah, and that brings up a really good point, and why I really advocate for the Morrison system, because it looks at a balanced training perspective for whoever you are as a lifestyle. And not just as, a period of time when you want to become an athlete, or after you've been an athlete and you want to become, the best, performing civilian that you can be, whatnot. You start this now, and it builds into your career. And then you take your career with that same balanced, periodized approach. And so then when you meet those transition periods, it's just a change. It's just a change in the schedule of your training.
Right.
And you've already got the skills. You're not having to learn something new like so many of these guys do.
Right.
And frankly, what drives a lot of them crazy and causes them a lot of pain.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Doc. And for you guys watching, Doc Higgins is our doc, my doc. So I will only go to the best, and this man is the best. His website is www.grovehiggins.com, and I'm going to put that on the bottom of the screen. If you are not in the Colorado Springs area and you're injured or you're looking for performance enhancement and whatnot, look, here's what I did when I had all of my injuries. The Air Force did not help me one bit. It was Motrin. I couldn't even get a referral downtown. I ended up spending my own money, unfortunately, before I met you. But I actually came to Colorado and California and worked with people that put me back together. And I had to do that, flying all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast just to get that treatment. I wouldn't be where I am now. And the future is bright, and it's only getting better as we go out. But you have to be willing to do those things, because guys like Doc Higgins, they're pretty much, I'm not trying to put you on too high of a pedestal, but guys like yourself are 1 in a million, but it's because only 1 in a million will undertake the task of learning all of these things and go through the education and the experience that you have to get to where you're able to do those things. So that's why I'm saying get on an airplane, get in the car, come to Colorado Springs. If you're not here, if you are here and you need to be tuned up, this is the man for you, for sure. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon.
Yeah. And I have to thank you and all the service guys and anybody in uniform. Whether you're in the police, fire, or in the military, for your service. It's a huge inspiration to me, and I've learned so much from you guys that has enriched my own life. And so, please let me serve you if I can.
And to that effect, anyone who's wondering, this man has worked with literally thousands and thousands of soldiers out of Fort Carson, so he really means that. So, Doc, thank you so much, and we'll see more from you soon, I hope.
Definitely.